about having this kind of development anywhere near a downtown. It just doesn't happen. I don't have a need for that right now in my life, but I don't feel like it's my right to tell people what they can or can't have. So if there are other people, can demonstrate to me why it is that this would be a bad decision other than some vague notion that it would set a precedence, I can listen to that. That would be it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvray. Additional questions or comments from the council? Just very briefly, I made my comments at the Plan Commission meeting. I'm not going to spend as much time this evening as I did there. Of the 3 questions, the only one that I answered no to was question number 3. I think Mr. Manley, when he went through his rationale, explained everything very eloquently. I do believe that if we should support private well in areas that can be easily served by municipal services. We ought to do that, and they should not be on private well and septic. I think one of the points that was made the other evening, and maybe not made this evening, is that if the consolidation merger had gone through with the town, which was passed by city residents by over 90%, all areas in the town that currently are covered by private sewer and well would have been city residents. We dealt with that issue. We worked very, very closely with the town of Verona to make sure that they would be protected and that they wouldn't be forced to switch to the city sewer and water. So I think, very clearly that I can support this type of development. However, I'd also like to state that, and I've been involved with the Common Council here since 1997, not once has the city initiated an annexation into the city. And I think that's an important point to point out. And Mr. Heinrichs and I have had this conversation that if this development were to come into the city, then he has to initiate that annexation. He has to work with the neighbors so that they can deal with their concerns. He has to work with Dane County to make sure, since they're a neighbor abutting the property with the dog park, that their concerns are addressed as well. The city has not initiated this development. The city has had conversations regarding this development for a number of years, but the push has not come from the city. So I certainly am open to continuing conversations about this. There's certainly a lot of work that needs to be done before it would come to the city for the next step, but that's something that Mr. Heinrichs and others need to work out. Mr. McGilvray.
Forgot one thing I'd like the council to keep in mind. We currently don't have any plans for bringing more property into the city of Verona for building of homes. We're nearly built out in our lots right now. The USA process is not an easy process. It's not a slam dunk that you'll get more lots in for housing, whatever the housing might be. This provides us with an opportunity to expand our housing stock, and I think it was demonstrated by a couple people who live in Westridge. Those people would be moving out. They'd be moving into homes like this and opening up stock. One other thing, we're building business parks. We're trying to attract people who run those businesses into our city. This is a good opportunity to have proximity to the business park and provide them with a type of housing that they might be looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvray. Mr. Diaz?
I just had a general question, either for you, Mr. Mayor, or for the city staff. You made reference to ongoing processes in the future. Is there any official process that'll happen, or are we just kind of in a wait-and-see mode right now?
Well, the process as I see it is, if it is to move forward, is Mr. Heinrichs, I think he would agree that there is additional work that he needs to do. There's plans that have to be submitted to the planning department, have to go to the plan commission and come before the city council. So we've had a lot of conversation to this point, but certainly there would be public hearings. There would be ample opportunities for citizens of the city and residents of the town to comment at a public hearing and another avenue. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on this before it moves forward.
Thank you.
Mr. McGilvray.
In fairness to Mr. Heinrichs, I would really like it, and in fairness to the people who live out there who are wondering what's going to happen here in the next couple years, I would very much like it if we'd all just say to Mr. Heinrichs yes or no at this point. And Granted, councils can change, as we have seen, but for the time being, I think it's important for him to know, and the professionals that work with him and the people who live adjacent to this property, what's going to be done. So, with that being said, I am saying yes to Mr. Heinrichs and moving forward and addressing the issues that have been brought up.
Does anyone else in the council wish to offer any additional comments? Mr. Manley?
I guess if it wasn't clear from my prior comments, I'm supportive as well.
Additional questions, comments? Mr. Yurs?
Just, to go off of what Mr. McGilvery asked, I think I've made my position clear, but at this point, I'm unable to support this proposal.
Anyone else from the council? Ms. Doyle?
I would also be unable to support this development.
Mr. Diaz?
I would also be unable to support the development.
Other comments? My position is that I support continuing forward to have conversations and discussions with Mr. Heinrich and other property owners in the area. Seeing no other comments, there is no action on this item. It was for discussion purposes only. I appreciate all the comments, appreciate the input that we had from Mr. Heinrichs and others on this issue. Thank you very much. We will move then to, Mr. Yurs, anything else from Plan Commission?
No, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move then to the Finance Committee. Mr. McGilvery, please.
Oh, don't all leave now. This is when it gets exciting. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 9B1, I'll make a motion to approve payment of the monthly bills in the amount of $3,240,400.16.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvery, seconded by Ms. Doyle. Mr. McGilvery?
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. McGilvery, Adam, could you maybe ask them in the back to quiet down, please?
Or just
Thank
shut
you.
the doors.
It's an open.
It's an open meeting. We can't close the
doors.
doors. Go ahead, Mr. McGilvery.
All right. In the way of explanation, 3 of the larger items from this month's bill run, first being to J.H. Findorf and Son for the application number 7, Verona Well number 5, $1,408,167. This is a TIF expense for, again, well number 5. And the way of explanation, the second one being to Live Brew LLC for an economic development incentive fund or a payment $600,000. This was for the construction of the Wisconsin Brewing Building, paid directly to the developer per the agreement. And lastly, to Habersley Stone for the Lincoln Street culverts, as you heard, nearly 100% completed, $275,357.32.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvery. You've heard the explanation of the major expenditures. The bills to be approved this evening total an amount $3,240,400.16. Are there any additional questions or concerns, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the approval of the bill signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried and the bills are approved. Mr. McGilvery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 9B2, make a motion to approve Resolution R-13-031, approving the commitment and assignment of fund balances.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvery. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Reekie. Mr. McGilvery?
Thank you. We have explanation from the administrator's notes. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB, establishes the accounting standards that the city follows in the preparation of its financial statements. GASB 54 establishes definitions and reporting requirements for different funds. In September of 2010, the City Council approved a resolution committing funds for the city's different special revenue funds as required by GASB 54. Currently, the City of Verona accounts for its share of Verona Fire District in a special revenue fund. The Verona Fire District will be dissolved at the end of 2013, and the city will be establishing a city fire department effective January 1st, 2014. In order to account for the city fire department in a special revenue fund, the city council would need to take action to formally commit the resources of the city fire department to be maintained in a special revenue fund.
You've heard the explanation from Mr. McGilvery. Are there any questions or comments on the approving the commitment and assignment of fund balances? Seeing no questions, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. McGilvery?
Make a motion to establish, or make a motion establishing and authorizing the filing of positions for city fire department.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvery. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Manley. Mr. McGilvery?
Thank you. Again, from the administrator's notes, at the July 30th, 2013 Committee of the Whole meeting, Fire Chief Joe Giver represented his recommendation for the structure of positions for a city fire department. That structure consists of 6 full-time positions, including the fire chief, and up to 40 part-time paid-on-call or POC members, and 30 part-time paid-on-premises POP members. In addition, the chief has suggested exploring shared positions for the assistant chief, prevention/plan review, and administrative assistant as part of the 2014 budget. At this time, the fire chief is requesting that the city council authorize the establishment and filing of 5 full-time subordinate positions and up to 40 POC and 30 POP positions. City employment for these positions would be effective July 1st, 2014.
You've heard the explanation from Mr. McGilvery. Mr. Burns?
Just a correction that would be January 1st rather than July 1st.
I'm sorry, that is correct.
Thank you, Bill.
My reading glasses failed me.
Are there questions or comments from the council? Questions or comments? Mr. Yours?
I just kind of want to extend some of the conversation we had at the Committee of the Whole meeting on this topic. One of the questions was, the justification for the open hire process. If you could just explain once again why you support the open hire process, and then I think I'm gonna have couple of follow-up questions.
Chief Giver?
That would be the ability to look at all our options to bring in, to make sure we have the best qualified staff that we can have in the fire department and for the city of Verona.
Okay,
Go ahead,
and
Mr.
then
Ayers.
one of the other topics that we talked about that I think, I want to revisit tonight was the topic of, is this trying to change the disciplinary matters? And I guess that has, people have called me from the police and fire, or not the police and fire, the fire district. And, I kind of, the words alluded to me that was going to be the fix to some of the problems that we've been having. After speaking with others, I've been told that's not the case. And so if that's not the process to fix some of the problems, I'm wondering if you could just go into a little bit of how we're trying to deal with the problems that the fire department's facing currently.
Chief Giver?
The problems we're facing currently, we're looking at trying to bring them in line and to move forward to have a positive and excellent fire department. There is not an attempt here to clear people of the fire department and to solve any problems. This is just a open process to look and see what there is for staff out there that are available. There's no one saying that the current staff will not be hired. It's just we're looking at doing an open recruitment to see what else is out there.
And this comment is by no means meant to target at anybody in the room or anywhere else. But I just want to have on the record that, if this process were to try and fix the problems the fire department's having, I don't think it would achieve those goals by any stretch of the imagination. And I think it would be unethical to offer the chance to apply for a position that your name would not be looked at. If that were going to be the case, I would hope, and I'm not accusing of anyone of this, I hope that would be brought up front and then hopefully go through some other procedures that could be made to fix those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Yers. Additional comments? Mr. Diaz?
I just had a clarification. This is just purely for staffing, and none of these funds could be used for recruitment costs, if I'm understanding this correctly?
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, this item on the agenda relates just to authorizing the positions and the filling of those positions. The next item on the agenda relates to cost for the recruitment process. And maybe just to direct people that in your packet is a sheet based on information recommended by the chief listing what the full-time subordinate positions would be and the recommended maximum compensation with either 12-hour or 24-hour schedule. I think there was some discussion at the Finance Committee that there was general support for the 24-hour schedule, but that might be a good point to clarify as well on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. McGilvray?
Well, I guess first of all,
Sure, Mike.
I have to ask Mr. Yers, you're alluding to some kind of problem or situation, and if you could clarify, I'm not sure I know where you're going with that.
Mr. Yers?
Sure. I've been either contacted or I have contacted lots of people involved in this situation. And, as we discussed at the committee of the whole meeting,
Which I was not at.
there was considerable talk that the open hire process is trying to fix the problems of the fire department, which have consisted of insubordination issues or boundary issues between officers and the chief, things of that nature.
If I could, Mr. McGilvray, before you respond to that, I want to clarify for those that are watching at home and you were not at the committee of the whole meeting. There were some comments like that made, but they were not made from anyone that sits on this side of the table. There were comments that were made from the public, but I did not hear any elected officials at all say that it was to correct any problems at the Verona Fire Department. Mr. McGilvray.
Well, one of the comments that I heard tonight by someone I respect, Mr. Schultz, and I do respect you. He's a neighbor. He's been a good neighbor. Your comment was a loss of leadership, and I also heard someone else talk about leadership. I can tell you, as someone who was in the service, one of the things that you learn really quick, whether or not you agree with the person on top, you listen to the person who's leading, because that's the way that type of structure is designed to work. And if the chief, who has been selected by the PFC to run this fire department, has come out and said that he wants to do an open hire, me, in a position that believes he is in his leadership position, I'm going to listen to him. And I've taken a little bit of umbrage, I guess, with some of the things I've heard anecdotally that came out of that committee of the whole as possibly withholding monies in order for, or that would allow the chief to do his recruiting process. I mean, if we want to create a fire department that is truly built on a good foundation, we have to enable the guy who's at the top to do his job. And it isn't always easy. I'm sitting here before you. I know some of you would disagree with me, but it isn't always easy for the guy who's sitting at top to do his job. And if he's asking for us to support him, I don't know how we have a successful and positive fire department moving forward if we don't support this gentleman right now in the way he wants to do this hiring process. And he has stated, for the record, that he's not precluding anyone who is currently employed by the fire district from being employed by the fire department. I would hope as we move forward from this piece onto the next piece that we will find it within our ability to fund this recruitment process.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvray. Additional questions? Mr. Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Burns had asked for clarification with respect to the discussion we had at Finance Committee and whether or not it would be desirable to be looking at these positions based on a 12-hour schedule or a 24-hour schedule. And I think if money is no object and we're just looking at this purely from a staffing standpoint, a 24-hour schedule is clearly more desirable. But I think it's important to realize that the quick back-of-the-envelope math that I've done here is that the difference between a 12-hour schedule and a 24-hour schedule is a little bit more than $61,000. So there's a cost associated with that. I happen to think that that cost is worth it, and I would be supportive of that additional cost. I think, however, as a member of the Finance Committee, and knowing that our 2014 budget is just around the corner, it's important to understand that the impact on our budget of an additional $61,000, even though that doesn't sound like a lot, it's considerable. And, you know, I think for those of us who support, as I think we all do sitting around the dais here, you know, transitioning to a full-time department that is fully staffed in a way that will meet the service needs of the citizens and the taxpayers of Verona. You know, we need to be cognizant of the fact that this is just one piece of the budget picture, and we've got a lot of other aspects of the budget, from the library to the senior center to another thing near and dear to my heart, public safety and the police department, public works, and our ability to fund parks and other city services. It all adds up to a lot, and I think that there's an intersection here between this discussion and the one that we had previously, and that is that by my count, a majority of the members of this body expressed their disapproval of a development project that would have not only covered the additional expense associated with these positions on a 24-hour basis, but would help us fund a lot of other priorities for our budget. And I think it's important to keep that in the forefront of our minds as we debate these issues, because at some point, all of the money for these services has to come from somewhere. And from my standpoint, it's not acceptable to just say, well, we'll raise taxes by whatever we need to get there. We have to figure out how to grow our tax base instead of growing our tax burden. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And just to clarify, Mr. Manley, you said about raising taxes. We're limited as to what we can raise. So it gets to a point where we have to start picking and choosing and setting priorities, which we've done in the past, but it makes it even more difficult when we start adding these types of things. However, I know we support them. Thank you for your comments. Other questions or comments on the motion? Sure. Mr. Yers.
Thank you. My other question comes along the timeline. I was very pleased to hear during Ms. Newton's statements that November was the date to have the decisions by. And so my question is, do we have goals set up to meet for the other parts of this recruitment process?
Yes, we do. I have put together a full timeline that starts from advertising all the way to final offers of employment and stuff. And they would start the week after, the next week, hopefully is something we'd be able to start running the ads, and then for 3 weeks, and then we'd start going through the applications and the rest of the process, ending up with conditional offers in the first part of November.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments from the council? Mr. Yers?
Two. I guess you can answer them in one breath, but there are two questions. Has the PFC approved the structure for the new fire department, and has the PFC officially approved the process?
I'd ask Ms. Newton to please come forward if you would, so that people at home can hear the response as well.
We discussed the open recruitment process, but we didn't formally take that motion yet. That's something that we'll probably discuss on Wednesday. We also didn't formally approve the structure. We looked at the structure that was suggested by the chief, but we knew that, you know, the structure is dependent on what the budget is for the city, and so we wanted to see what the city council, how you guys wanted to weigh in terms of department budget.
Seeing no further question, Mr. Giver, Chief Giver.
I'd just like to say, Mayor, that, you know, I've been career fire chief for 17 years, and out of those 17 years, 16 of them at least, I've let one question guide me in my outlook and operation of the fire departments, and that is, what's in the best interest of the people we serve, not what's in my best interest, or it's in what's in the best interest of giving the best service we can to our community, and that's what I do in every tough decision. And these are tough decisions, but clearly I think that's the course we need to go, or I wouldn't be here today saying that.
Thank you, Chief. Seeing no other questions or comments, the motion is to approve. We discussed establishing and authorizing the filling of the positions, and this would be to approve that action as outlined. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And the motion carries. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 9B4, make a motion authorizing the utilization of funds for fire department recruitment costs.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvray. Is there a second?
Um,
Seconded by Mr. Manley. Ms. Doyle, before
Yeah.
we hear the explanation,
oh, sure.
is that all right?
We can go ahead with the explanation.
As
but
a
I'll-
member of finance, that's fine.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Doyle.
I just wanted to say that during the finance committee meeting tonight, I did vote to pass this along to the council on the understanding that asking some questions of Chief Giver that we would need to allocate city funds for the recruitment process regardless of if it was an open hiring process or not. But I would actually like to make a motion to postpone this tonight until the PFC makes a formal acknowledgement of what the process is and exactly what the budget will be. I know it's only the difference of a few $100s, but I believe that in being good stewards of taxpayer money, we need to see exactly what we'll be spending before the council approves it. And just to further go on, that I know none of this is easy work, and it's tough managing people and personalities and things like that, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from both sides in this discussion, and just feel that if we don't have documentation that's proving that these ethics and values and standards, and I know everything is spoken about very much in the hypothetical, and I haven't heard a lot of concrete about what's with the hiring process, but I think if we feel strongly enough that we need to support our chief in this transition and that we don't want to rock the boat too much in that respect, I guess I just haven't seen evidence that shows that we shouldn't also support our full-time staff. So I just still have not seen evidence to support an open hiring process and think that we deserve to support our public safety workers. So I would like to reiterate the motion to postpone until the PFC has made their decision about the hiring process and we know exactly what funds will be allocated or need to be.
A point of order, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a second motion?
We could have a motion to defer, would take precedence over the main motion. I don't want to put words in your mouth,
No,
but
no,
if the
that's
motion
fine.
would be to defer until the next meeting, or would the motion be to defer until after such time the PFC has taken action?
Yeah, I would defer until the PFC has taken action then.
We do have a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
If I need to, I want to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Before the second.
Go ahead if you have a question.
My question has to do with what would the procedure be to staff the city fire department once January 1st comes if the Police and Fire Commission should choose not to perform an open hiring process? So in other words, the current staff have already been told that their jobs will end at the end of this calendar year. So what's the alternative to an open hiring process?
I'm going to make the decision that conversation is not germane to the motion that's before us right now to defer. So we have a motion to defer until there's action taken by the PFC.
I have a question for clarification. Is the motion to postpone debatable?
A motion to postpone is, a motion to table is not.
Okay, thank you. I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And again, Ms. Doyle, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it would be to defer action on this item until after the PFC takes action.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Doyle, seconded by Mr. Diaz. Mr. Yours.
First of all, I would just like to state that, I do believe we do need to fund the process either way, because I do feel that even if we bring on the current staff, we need to make sure that all of the certifications are up to date and that all those criteria are met. So my question is more related to the timeline and making sure that your work doesn't necessarily stop because we are postponing this vote. And that's where my concern rests. So if that could be addressed.
Can I answer that?
Go ahead, Ms. Newton.
We've heard from this body before, and we've heard from the firefighters. Everybody wants to know if they have a job or not, and we're very sensitive to that. And so we want to act as quickly as we can. The reason that we haven't been able to act more quickly to this point is because you control budgets, and you have to make budget decisions. So the timeline that we're going to discuss Wednesday night at the Police and Fire Commission is to start advertising for the positions next week for a 3-week process. The costs were provided in the documents that the Finance Committee got. $325 is all that's allocated for advertising. $325. I don't know that that's going to make or break anybody's budget for $325. The rest of the costs that are $4,000, well, the difference between $325 and $4,555, so about $4,200 is for medical tests. So for physicals, psychological evaluations, drug tests, and background investigations. The city would not be doing its due diligence if it doesn't require those for every city employee that's being hired full-time in the fire department, whether they're all current personnel or whether they're new personnel. So I hope that answers your question. And if you decide that you don't want to approve the money, even though you know what the costs are going to be, then you delay our decision-making process.
Ms. Doyle?
So is that to be said that you believe the decision will be to follow an open hiring process, so you'll need the $325?
If we wish to advertise in the way that we have been discussing with the chief, we would need the $325. There are ways that can be advertised for free. And I don't know, we haven't formally voted, but by consensus, we had a discussion and all 5 of us supported an open recruitment process at our last meeting. So I don't know, without having a meeting, whether anybody's votes are going to change or not.
Mr. McGilvray?
I was wondering, I know you mentioned this in your previous statements during the public comment. Could you reiterate what you said about the current employees of the fire district? And I believe you said they were guaranteed the opportunity to have an interview?
Absolutely.
Regardless, they're moved on to the next piece outside of the actual advertisement.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
We are, everybody who applies will be given a rank as to how well that they, fit the criteria for the job descriptions that are posted. And then regardless whether the current staff are, the highest ranked or not, no matter where they rank, they are guaranteed an interview by the Police and Fire Commission. Now that is our recommendation of the chief, and I will have to formally vote on that on Wednesday, but I feel confident enough with the other 4 members who serve with me on that body that they will all support that.
We have legal counsel here, and Brian Clymer, do you have a comment to make?
If I could, just briefly. I just want to make sure that, I'm here representing the Common Council, so I just want to make sure everybody understands the process, because I'm not quite sure if deferring the action is really going to accomplish what you're hoping for it to accomplish. So the language that we're talking about in the statute right now talks about, and I'm just going to read it so that I don't misparaphrase it. The chief shall appoint subordinates subject to approval by the board. Such appointments shall be made by promotion when this can be done with advantage. That decision is made by the chief. There's Wisconsin Appellate Court case law that's clearly on point. If the chief decides that it cannot be done with advantage, then it's otherwise from an eligible list provided by examination and approval by the board and kept on file with the clerk. I'm not sure where the Police and Fire Commission is with respect to what process they're going to utilize to fill the position from an eligible list. It's my understanding that the chief has said that they are going to work off the list. But the motion that is right now before the council deals with how much money, if any, is the council going to be willing to allocate toward that hiring it's been referred to as the open hiring process, but really it's through the, the examination and the testing that the PFC is going to have to conduct, that the chief has to conduct. And I think what they're telling you today is that they still would need to exactly figure out what that open hiring process is. But my understanding is the chief has made the decision that he does want to use the open hiring process. So I think that what you're being asked to do right now, are you going to allocate funds or not? I think that you probably have all the facts that you need at this point to decide, are we going to adopt the motion as passed by the Finance Committee, or are we willing not to provide any money to the hiring process, or is there something in between? But I'm not sure that you're going to get anything from deferring it, other than potentially upsetting the timeline that the chief and the Police and Fire Commission to date have discussed.
Mr. Manley?
Mr. Kleinmeyer, you read the statute, and I'm going to paraphrase here because I don't have it memorized, but it talked about hiring existing employees if doing so can be done with advantage.
Correct.
And I know this is getting kind of legal, but you're an attorney, so I want to ask you this question. These will be hires for the City of Verona Fire Department, correct?
Correct.
How many existing employees are there in the City of Verona Fire Department?
There are no employees in the city fire department.
So how could we possibly hire or promote from existing employees with advantage if there aren't any?
I think that there's an argument that you can't, because you do not have any current employees, so you have no current employees to promote. That being said, this is a unique situation in the sense that we do have a current fire department that does serve the city as well as the town through the fire district. And the discretion that is provided to the chief under Wisconsin appellate case law to determine whether or not a promotion can be done with advantage is very broad. That's my way of saying, if the chief in this instance were to decide that he did just want to promote from within, I think that there's probably a strong argument that that could be done, but there's just as strong argument, I think, to support what he's been saying, that he wants to have the open hiring process. I guess that second part is the policy decision.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments on the motion to defer? Mr. Diaz?
I just want to make a general point about the open hiring process. It's been repeatedly said that the chief needs discretion to hire the best people, but I think that there's more than that. You're not assembling a team of robots. You're dealing with human beings, and loyalty goes both ways. Firefighters are expected to rush into burning buildings to save people's lives at the risk of their own. And if we can't even give them any bit of fairness in the hiring process, I don't think that's the right thing to do. I don't think that's how you get a good city fire department. We're talking about potentially down the line consolidation, and we could find ourselves in the same situation. And I just don't think it's fair to the city employees to say, well, you might just lose your job, not because of anything you did, not because of anything not because of what anyone told you. You'll just lose your job because whatever. And while I would hope it wouldn't come to that, there's clearly the perception that's out there. And I just cannot support any money for the open hiring. And maybe something that will happen at the commission might change my mind, but I doubt it. So while I will obviously vote to postpone, I would just vote not to fund this at all because I don't think it's worth the city money. I think it's the wrong thing to do. Thank you.
The motion before us is a motion to defer or to postpone until after the PFC takes action. Let's try and keep our discussion on that motion. Mr. McGilvery?
Thank you. Along those lines, I would say that I think Mr. Kleinmeyer represented it fairly well, that you're not doing the process any favors. The process is in place. If you're opposed to the process, I respect that Mr. Diaz has said that he's opposed to the process. Frankly, I'm tired of people being opposed to a process that's in place. You know, I've seen this happen on a number of occasions, and you can kick me once and I can say, okay, fine. You can kick me again and I can say, fine, and walk away. I'm getting tired of getting kicked here. The process is in place. It's fairly clearly defined by state statute. The reason we have the PFC do what the PFC does is exactly to stop what's going on right now. The public, the elected officials should not be involved in determining who's going on to the police and fire departments. We should not, nor should we be trying to affect who goes on to the police and fire departments. That should clearly be the responsibility of the fire chief and the PFC. Now, you can tell me that that's not what we're trying to do here by deferring or defunding or not funding, but for me, it's pretty obvious. There's no respect for the process. There's no respect for the statute. If you're going to just try to find a way out around it, come out and say it. I respect that Mr. Diaz has done that. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments on the motion to defer? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of deferral signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no.
Nay.
Can I have the nays raise their hand, please? 1, 2, 3. It sounded louder than that, but according to the show of hands, the motion fails. The motion to defer, I'm sorry, the motion to defer is approved. So it'll be on the agenda, well, after the PFC takes action, it would come back on the agenda. Mr. McGilvery, is there anything else from Finance Committee?
No.
Thank you. We'll move then to Public Works, Sewer and Water. Mr. McGilvery?
Under item 9C1, I'll make a resolution, or make a motion to approve Resolution R-13-032, approving an agreement for the resurfacing of County Highway PB and the jurisdictional transfer of County Highway M and County Highway PB.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvery. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Doyle. Mr. McGilvery?
County Trunk PB located in the city is in need of resurfacing, which will require contributions from the city of Verona and Dane County. Under the terms of the proposed agreement, the county will resurface and spot repair curb sections on County Highway PB from USH 151 on ramps to most southern city limits. The total estimated cost for the project is $360,000. Funding for the project is as follows: WISDOT CHIPS funds $180,000, Dane County funds $90,000, City of Verona not to exceed $90,000. In addition, Dane County has entered into a separate agreement with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for the installation of traffic signals at the intersection of County Highway PB at County Highway M at no cost to the city. The signals will be maintained by WISDOT for 3 years, and after 3 years, the county and city will share in the maintenance cost. Under the terms of the agreement, after construction is complete, the city would agree to accept jurisdiction of County Highway PB within the corporate limits from American Way northerly to US Highway 151, a distance of .34 3/4 of a mile on November 1st, 2013. Also included in this agreement is acceptance by the city for jurisdiction of County Highway M from Factory Street south to Prairie Heights Drive. The Public Works Director and City Engineer have negotiated with county staff a one-time lump sum payment in the amount of $200,000 for future maintenance of this section of roadway, and that $200,000 would go into a designated fund.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvery. We have a motion and a second. Are there questions on the motion? Seeing no questions, all those in favor of Resolution R-13-032 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. That resolution has been approved. Mr. McGilvery?
Under item 9C2, make a motion to award the contract for the installation of public improvements for Liberty Business Park in the amount of $1,066,733.50 to A1 Excavating A1 Excavating Inc. out of Bloomer, Wisconsin.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvery. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Reekie. Mr. McGilvery?
Thank you. In accordance with the official notice to bidders, sealed bids were received for the above projects, subject project at the office of City Clerk, 2 p.m. local time on August 8, 2013. Following the close of the bidding, the bids received were publicly opened and read aloud. Staff have reviewed all the bids received, and a copy of bid tabulation is included in your council packet. Prior to the bid opening, 10 sets of plans were sent to prime contractors. 4 sealed bids were received for the project. The low base bid was submitted by A1 Excavating out of Bloomer, Wisconsin in the amount of $1,066,733.50. The second bid was submitted by S&L Underground and Trucking Inc. of Merrimack in the amount of $1,073,668. A1 Excavating has not performed work in the city of Verona, but has performed work in the city of Platteville and the village of Wanakee. The city of Platteville was a multi-million-dollar project for the reconstruction of State Highway 80 Water Street that included complete utility replacement and street reconstruction. A1 Excavating completed this project ahead of schedule and performed the work in a satisfactory and workmanlike manner. In that A1 Excavating Inc. is financially capable and manpower and has the equipment to perform the work, it is recommended that the City of Verona accept this bid for Liberty Business Park project. The Public Works Committee took this up and would recommend this for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvery, for your explanation. Are there any questions or comments from the council? If not, the motion before you is to award a contract to A1 Excavating for the installation of public improvements for Liberty Business Park Phase 1 in an amount totaling $1,066,733.50. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Is there anything else from Public Works, Sewer, and Water?
Along those lines, I was wondering if Mr. Gunlock could just speak to the timing of this project, anticipated start time and anticipated finish.
Mr. Gunlock?
This project will start as soon as we can get contract documents signed and get a pre-construction conference. I would say that probably will start in 3 weeks and it'll be completed around November 15th.
Thank you, Mr. Gunlock. Next, we have new business. Agenda item 10.1, we have issuance of operator licenses this evening. Ms. Lynch, please.
Yes, there is a list distributed to each of you with the 14 applicants for operators licenses and their establishments.
Do we have any potential motions for the issuance of operator licenses? We have a motion by Mr. Manley. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McGilvery. All those in favor of approval of the operators licenses signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Next, we have discussion and possible action regarding selection of an architect for the fire EMS facility project. And I would ask Mr. Burns to give the background, please.
Yes, thank you. The city received 6 responses to our request for proposal for architectural services for the fire EMS facility. On August 8th, members of the Ad hoc Public Safety Task Force Committee met to interview the top 2 firms that had submitted proposals after an evaluation was done by the police chief, fire chief, and EMS chief, as well as myself, to narrow down to the top 2 firms, which were Bray Architects and Five Bugles Design. The committee members present at the meeting agreed that their consensus is to recommend Five Bugles Design as the best firm for this project. Primary factors based on that recommendation are that Five Bugles Design had the most experience with fire and EMS facilities, including facilities of a similar scale to what is being planned for Verona. The Five Bugles Design team includes a fire service specialist with experience as a fire chief in Wisconsin. Five Bugles Design team designed several of the facilities toured by committee members that were identified as good examples of the type of station that could work well in Verona. And in addition, the proposed compensation for Five Bugles Design was lower than that of Bray Architects. So the recommendation at this time would be to approve the selection of Five Bugles Design as the architect for the project and to direct staff on working on preparing a professional services agreement with Five Bugles Design, which would come back to the City Council for consideration at a future meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Manley, did I see your hand? Mr. Manley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Burns, I just want to be clear, if we approve this item tonight and the selection of Five Bugles as the architect, that we are not committing to a total project cost as they have estimated it in their RFP, nor are we committing to a compensation amount at this time, correct?
Mr. Burns?
That is correct. It would just be identifying the preference and directing staff to work on an agreement, and as part of that agreement, it would spell out the compensation terms. It's not making a commitment on the total compensation or the size of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Manley. I'd just like to add to the comments that Mr. Burns had that very good presentations, very good information provided by both companies. From the individuals that were present at the task force meeting the other evening, it was unanimous consensus that we move forward with Five Bugles. There were comments made that we were comfortable that either one of the firms could have done an exceptional job for the city, but I think it is important to point out that it was a unanimous decision or recommendation that's coming from the members present. We didn't have a quorum, but the consensus of those members present was unanimous. Mr. McGilvray?
Yeah, within the context of that conversation too, I would encourage the council to continue to think about the construction management component. It was illustrated during the conversations there that both firms were comfortable in working with a construction management component, and I think you've all heard me say it before. I think it's really important that we have that piece in place and relatively soon, because as we design this, it's going to be important to have someone with a professional background that can help us, streamline, number one, but also keep an eye on the budget as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvray. Questions, comments, potential motions? There's no action needed this evening.
No, I'm sorry, there is action needed. There's no motion yet.
No motion, yeah, no motion yet.
Yep.
But we are requesting action. Mr. Yurs?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Yurs to approve moving forward with Five Bugles.
Second.
Correct? We have a motion and a second by Mr. Diaz. Is there further discussion on the motion? Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We are on to announcements. Do we have any announcements this evening? Not seeing any announcements. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Ricky?
One of my listening sessions is in the past, but the next one is tomorrow night, Tuesday evening at the Senior Center at 7 o'clock. Hope you can come.
Thank you. Seeing no additional comments, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Diaz. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Doyle to adjourn. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.